Hello and welcome to Future Horizons, the Tempest Podcast. I'm your host, Zevi Watmough. The UK government's commitment to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by April 2027, with an ambition to increase to 3% in the next Parliament as economic and fiscal conditions allow, will see the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. In this episode, we focus on the benefits that Team Tempest will deliver to UK prosperity and the reasons why it is an important contributor to the UK's future economic growth. Joining me today to discuss this topic are Clive Higgins, ADS VP Defence and Leonardo UK Chair and CEO, John Stocker, BAE Systems Business Development Director, FCAS, and Mark Tivey, Rolls-Royce Business Development Director, Future Programmes Combat Air. Invest 2035, the government's new modern industrial strategy, named defence as one of 8 priority sectors for economic growth. It stated that defence and national security are foundational for economic growth across the UK. With the strategic aim of the Defence Industrial Strategy to make sure the imperatives of national security and a high-growth economy are aligned, Clive, could we start by asking you about how ADS and the UK defence sector is working with government and our UK armed forces to deliver this?
Yes, absolutely, Zevi. And I think what we've seen in the recent past is testament to why we need a strong industrial base in all of the institutional, industrial, academic stakeholders in lockstep going forward. COVID clearly taught us about resilience in supply chains, and the ongoing events in Ukraine are helping us recognise and understand the need for a strong industrial base, delivering capability when it's required. And I'm pleased that the UK government has launched the Strategic Defence Review, the Defence Industrial Strategy, and the overall industrial strategy as well, which we hope to have visibility of in the very near future. All of that is playing in very strongly to what was already committed from a Tempest perspective. Investment in capability jointly by industry and government, ensuring that we've got a skill base, an industrial base, and a capability that allows us to, 1, protect ourselves, but 2, support that growth agenda that is also absolutely critical to a government. And we know that we will talk about it later, the opportunity that will come from exports of these type of capabilities going forward. So ADS is working hand in glove with government to inform these reviews, to ensure that the right questions are being asked, and that it's an opportunity for all of our membership, and that's SMEs into mid-tiers, and of course the primes that are represented around the table today. But this is a whole force approach. We need the UK industrial base working in lockstep with all of the stakeholders to deliver these outcomes we want over the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades in the future.
John, building on what Clive has said about the importance of the defence sector to UK resilience and economic growth, can you describe why the scale of the work being undertaken by Team Tempest has such potential to boost the prosperity of the nation?
Sure, Zoe, thanks for the question. I think, first of all, we tend to refer to the history again, that this isn't the first time that the UK team, the enterprise, across the 4 companies that lead it in terms of BAE Systems, Leonardo UK, Rolls-Royce and MBDA UK, but actually the entirety of the supply chain has been successful in the combat airspace in terms of driving enormous prosperity, skills, economic benefits, investment in R&D, infrastructure, you name it, across the board, across the nation. And actually that's another point, is that these programs are actually incredibly beneficial from a regional distribution point of view. So, for example, the independent analysis around the FCAS program and GCAP in particular has highlighted that 85% of all the benefits will be outside of London and the South East. So clearly, from a regional prosperity point of view, that's hugely important to where most of our companies are based, but also that national supply chain in terms of delivering those benefits to those communities. In terms of the scale, we have today already engaged over 580 companies, and that is large and small, down to proper SME territory as well as academic institutions, to be a part of this program, to take benefit from that investment. As I say, the skills, the long-term benefits of the pipeline that they see in front of them. And we as a team are continuing to work with suppliers as we move the program forward into its next phase. again, independent analysis has highlighted that over £37 billion of economic benefit is expected to be delivered by the programme as it stands today. And that's an important piece to highlight there, is that is just around the trilateral programme. That doesn't take account of exports. Exports, as I'm sure you know, Zevi, and many of the listeners will know, is an area where, again, the UK has been very successful in the combat air domain, which plays not only an important role in underpinning and strengthening strategic relationships that the UK holds around the world, but also, again, clearly delivers significant economic skills, investment, and all sorts of other benefits as part of this programme. And all the three partners in the UK, Italy, and Japan are equally clear that exports and future growth of this partnership on the programme will be key to all of our objectives.
Mark, John has touched on the geographical spread of the defence industry, and with it, it has brought a manufacturing infrastructure that is world class. Why is that key to a growth mindset when it comes to economic growth and prosperity?
Hi, Zevi. Thank you. Before I answer that one, I'm just going to pick up on one of the points that John made, which is about the academic institutions. And it relates to the question you've asked, because it really starts with building a pipeline of talent for success well into the future. So between us, the Team Tempest companies are working with well in excess of, I think it's about 25 universities right the way across the UK, in all four countries of the UK, to develop technologies, to develop know-how, but critically to start training that next cohort of engineers that will be the pipeline that eventually delivers this program and delivers the program right the way throughout its entire in-service life. So it's really important that we make those connections from the grassroots. The other thing that it does, which is interesting, is it gives the confidence to those institutions to also invest in themselves. If I look at what Rolls is doing with one particular university, we've encouraged the investment of several £1 million worth of investment into their infrastructure, into new buildings, into new techniques. That in turn makes them more attractive and attracts more people to industry. That's a key part of how this program is going to enable success and economic success as we go forward. But just to answer your question directly, what we're trying to do today, we have never tried to do. We are trying to put together cutting-edge skills that are only available in one or two other countries across the world, and in aspiring to that high level, we need the support of the entirety of the supply chain to come with us. Roughly about, I'll talk about Rolls, but I suspect it's the same for most of the companies, around 65% of the revenue that we receive flows through to the supply chain in some way, shape or form as we go through. So however we choose to transform ourselves and get ourselves ready for that new world and get ourselves ready to operate at that high level, we need the supply chain to be there with us. We have an obligation there to provide the certainty, the confidence, the route, the roadmap for them to be able to get there. But it's really important that, we as four companies will not succeed in this venture unless the entirety of that manufacturing base comes with us and is ready and adaptable to be able to perform at the highest level.
And that collaborative, adaptive mindset is essential, not just through the supply chain, but in the workforces of all of the partner companies. Both the Minister for Defence Procurement and the Chief of Air Staff have referred to GCAP as a national endeavour. How is the work, John, of Team Tempest acting as a catalyst for innovation and investment in digital skills, not just for GCAP, but for the wider UK Future Combat Air System capability?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Mark said then, in fact, the four larger companies that are represented generally on this podcast are really windows into the sector, into the opportunity space for hundreds and hundreds of companies in the sector more generally. And we all have a very long track record of working very closely with all sorts of companies. And as Mark said, we have this sort of fantastic codependence, both upwards and downwards in the supply chain, to ensure that we are mutually successful. And it really is a national endeavour in that regard. And that has actually spurred the UK to have this incredibly vibrant, incredibly competitive supply chain in the combat air sector, which also, of course, bleeds across into other sectors. It doesn't just stay the technology, the capabilities, the skills don't just stay in that space. They benefit both, sort of large and small companies involved in that endeavour in their other business as well. And I think that is reflected also then in the strength of the exports that the UK has in this space. Over 80% of UK defence exports over the last 10 years or so have been in the combat airspace, which includes large programmes such as Typhoon, of course, in more recent history, but actually also includes a lot of direct engagement of the supply chain in the UK on international programmes. It's not our place to name specific programmes, but we know from Asia through to the US, literally across the world, there are prime contractors that are seeking out UK suppliers because of the depth, because of the skills, because of the technology, the unique capabilities that they bring to that global supply chain. So that is incredibly important. More point to just highlight more broadly that this type of business drives innovation up and down the supply chain. In terms of what we're doing specifically under the programme, under the UK programme, for instance, there are over 60 technology development programmes underway. There are some marquee, let's call them, programs, such as the flight test aircraft from Leonardo UK led, the likes of the flying demonstrator from more the BAE Systems side, then obviously the engine demonstrator and programs that Rolls-Royce are running, which again very much pull through capabilities from across those supply chains. And again, we look to that supply chain for a lot of the innovation, the ability, again, as we are transforming digitally, to be able to work more rapidly in different ways. Large companies sometimes are not best placed to be able to drive that innovation. And so we are, again, in a positive sense, very codependent on our partners and suppliers throughout the country. We're also expanding how we're collaborating because of the nature of the capability on the programme, very much digitally driven, both in terms of how we deliver it, but also the nature of the military capability it will deliver. And I think we've touched on previously the increasing role of digital as part of that solution space. We are working, for example, with the likes of gaming companies that help us to be more intelligent around how we create better human-machine interfaces to support the operator in terms of how they manage this asset, in terms of how we work with AI specialists to be able to bring in that capability to analyze the vast amounts of data that will then be presented to the operator to enable them to make the right decisions at the right time. So we are both benefiting the supply chains in the more traditional sense in the combat airspace, but also very much opening the window to innovators from outside of that and allowing them to enter this complex long-term, but in the long run, very beneficial and hugely important to the UK space of the market.
Zevi, if I can just come in there, if that's okay. What I'd add to everything that John's just articulated is the importance of skills within this discussion, is where certainly ADS is looking across its membership to ensure that we have all of the right capability, talent leveraged across not only industry, but as we mentioned, into academia and all of the other institutional stakeholders to ensure that the future flow of talent into these programs and other significant programs is there. Because that innovation is coming from people, that drive to deliver this program is coming from the people, our people that are working on these very innovative projects today, and then ensuring that pipeline into the future is critical. We know there's a huge demand on these type of skills, whether it be the tech industry, the gaming industry, the defence industry coming forward. And kids today leaving school have choice. They don't have to come into defence or security, for example, but we need to work hand in glove across all of those stakeholders to ensure defence is seen as a real opportunity for a great career, something that can be very fulfilling over a longer period of time. And it's really important that the 3,500 people working on the programme today are advocates for the programme going forward, that the 1,000 apprenticeships and graduates that we have today are promoting it back into their schools, colleges and universities for the future. So this really is a whole team approach to that national endeavour point. And you will see the catalytic benefit of that, because you will be having very highly skilled, very innovative people moving into broader roles in the future that are really going to benefit all of us.
And of course, on top of the already thousands of people working on the programme, people all around the UK. That includes some of the major industrial hotspots that we have around the southwest, northwest, and up in Scotland. But that is absolutely not just limited to those areas. It is very much nationwide. And again, back to the growth agenda point, it's really important to remember that this type of work is highly productive. So again, that same analysis has demonstrated that programs such as these drive jobs which are over 80% more productive than the national average. And if we consider that because of the skills, because of the investment in the technology, the innovations, everything that's happening, that aligns extremely well, of course, to a growth agenda.
Mark, do you think we're going to see some really intriguing niche skills coming through? For example, the ability to solder together manufacturing and academia in a way that hasn't ever been attempted before, a way of creating new synergies?
Yeah, I'm so pleased you asked me this, Zevi. I could wax lyrical for hours on this one. Yeah, niche capabilities, blimey, where do I start? Yes, because I think a lot of what we're trying to do within the programme is addressing some of the fundamental challenges that we face as a country, not just from a threat perspective, but, we're talking about energy transition. So, our platform is going to be a more electric aircraft. The communication skills that Leonardo are piloting, or pioneering, I should say, they are going to have applications that we probably even haven't contemplated at this point. If I look at what we are doing at Rolls-Royce, everybody will have heard of 3D printing. We call it additive layer manufacturing. That's not new, but we are doing different versions of that additive layer manufacturing to be able to control the individual properties of metals, of non-metals. I can't go any further than that, but of non-metals. How we do that will resonate for decades to come. ALM is a fundamental transforming technology which will change how we manufacture in this country. We are currently doing things with geometries in cooling airflows that you cannot do any other way, but which have a fundamental impact on the size and weight of the engine that we're producing. And it is transforming the way in which we are thinking, not just for this programme, but we talk about the concept of spillover. And I think Rolls has a particular story to tell in this space, because obviously most people know Rolls-Royce from when they go on holiday and they look out the window of the aircraft and see the Rolls-Royce logo on the side of the engine. The skills and the techniques that we are developing today will have direct read across to that next generation of both single aisle and twin aisle aircraft that will be flying around in the 2040s and 2050s, when the airframers, Boeing, Airbus and the like, start their new development cycles. So yeah, when we're working with these niche skills operate within some really big themes that will translate across the whole of UK economy. And I think some of the things that we're currently working on today, we haven't even thought about where they can be applied yet.
That sounds really exciting, Mark. And Clive, a really interesting strand of that is the technological spillover into the supply chain, because it's not just the work that Team Tempest is undertaking with core partners. There's a wonderful potential for capability, skills, technological capacity to be brought to a supply chain to develop a sovereign capability. Can you describe how you've seen evidence of this recently?
I think not only recently, Zevi, but again, if you go back in time, you see this symbiotic relationship between defence and aerospace needing this baseline of innovation and skills that's not only driving benefit in the defence industry, but then into the commercial sector, which was just articulated. The reason we can go on holidays and flights and enjoy some of that is because of defence technology that was invested in by our forebearers, and we're seeing that spill through even now. So with the skills that we're working with in academia on to develop the next generation of digital systems using AI, machine learning, that's having catalytic benefit in many other areas. And it's with that investment that it allows it to happen. I think going forward, you're going to see some very interesting capabilities come out of this program and other defence programs that are going to have significant benefit to the UK nationally, but also the other partners, of course, and many of those commercialised at scale going forward as well. And that's that transition from defence to commercial that will add real value to UK GDP going forward, to allow us to export. And that's why you see the collaboration you see across all of the industrial partners. They know that the investment in this type of program and this technology will have significant benefit to their industrial base and their economies going forward. And should I dare say it, now we need that more than ever, given the geopolitical circumstances that we're all faced with.
Yeah, just to make that real, Zevi, just to sort of follow up on that, there was a number of ADS organisations got together to look at titanium recycling. And one of the ADS members was able to come up with a method for atomizing that titanium so that we could recycle it into a component. We managed to 3D print that as a nose cone for our Orpheus small engine demonstrator. And that's been run in the test cell. Now, if that thing breaks, it tends to go straight back through the engine. So that's the last thing you actually want it to do. So it's a high critical, high stress part, which was developed by the thinking of three members of ADS who came together and thought about that. And it goes back to what I was saying before about playing into big themes. Sustainability is a big theme that we are taking due notice of in this program, and thinking about how we move things around so that we minimise the amount of footprint that we have. So it's a good example of what Clive was talking about.
We've got a couple from the BAE side that I think are nice examples where, again, because we're collaborating with highly innovative suppliers and partners, one is around the flying demonstrator, and there are, without getting sort of too in the weeds on it, there are some parts of that which you go back 10 years, not let alone 40 years and whatever, when we were producing previous generations of aircraft, that could just not be produced previously in shapes under tolerances that will take certain stresses out of certain materials. Of course, they are to extremely high specifications for the purposes of this aircraft. But again, because of that investment and that innovation, the companies we are working with will be able to take that, and they will be best placed, not us, of course, to evolve that, to develop that into markets, be it commercial aerospace and or other broader markets where there is scale, where there is opportunity, to be able to really leverage the benefit from that. And again, keeps the UK at the forefront of how it is producing these world-leading components. Separately, we talk about the factory of the future, which is, again, we've been making lots of investments as a company, but also as a broader enterprise team, into how can we set ourselves up to produce in a more flexible and a more affordable and a more rapid fashion the products that will come out of this program. That is effectively a BAE Systems hosted sandpit, I sort of describe it as, where we bring together dozens of different companies, again, some of them very large. You talk about the Siemens and others of this world, many academic institutions, some really niche sort of robotics suppliers, you name it, sort of logistics companies, you name it, that is creating this environment where all these companies come together with a common purpose, supported by investment and obviously a direction of travel from the program and broader interests from our side, that allows us to all come together to create this phenomenally transformational way of being able to produce things in ways that we've never been able to do before, which of course is very important to how we can deliver this program. But again, all of those companies, those organizations will take all of that learning back out of that and then be able to exploit it themselves in their respective markets. And again, that is not, BAE Systems, that's not our job, that's not our business, that's not what we do. But that is what these different kinds of companies that have this extreme positive exposure to the other markets will take from that experience as well.
Zevi, I think it's really amazing that you listen to this conversation in from a technological program in defence, that you touch on economics, you touch on skills, you touch on sustainability. And I'll just give a quick shout out to the ADS Charter on sustainability that all of the Team Tempest partners and many of the supply chain have signed up to, that's driving that sustainability agenda in the Net Zero Directive. So you touch on all of these separate themes from a defence programme. So what an opportunity for a youngster at school today or at university or maybe thinking about an individual thinking about a second or third career to say, well, I want to be part of this journey. This is going to be decades in the making. But what an opportunity, an exciting opportunity to be part of that going forward.
And that brings us nicely to the recent House of Commons Defence Committee report on GCAP that talked about the importance of exports, not just in terms of economic benefits, but also in sustaining our sovereign military capability for years to come. How are we preparing for future opportunities with our GCAP partners? And how are we awakening that kind of international connection that's going to be necessary for the cross-pollination of tech and also export opportunities?
So from a BAE Systems point of view, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, we are very clear across the trilateral partnership, both at the industry level but also at the government level, that there is absolutely a key role for future exports. And we're a little bit careful with the term export. We also talk about partnership development because the reason many countries wish to invest at some point in the future in these sorts of programs and capabilities is just as much around the benefits that they will derive as a nation from an employment point of view and a technology point of view, which are the same reasons as well that align very well with what the UK and why the UK and Japan and Italy are doing this today. So we are clear that we are keeping open a range of different partnership models that will also allow for different nations to join in different ways at different times to meet their requirements, but also, of course, whilst ensuring that we protect the programme as a whole, because as you know, we are driving towards a challenging in-service date. So it is a balancing act around ensuring that we keep that as a key priority, but also are open to those conversations that allow other partners, users, customers of the future to start to engage more to understand what the programme can do for them. I think one of the most poignant examples for me of the commitment to that is the publicly announced changes that Japan has made to its export regulations. Of course, for many reasons that people will be aware of, Japan has not traditionally been very active in the defence export space for many years. And because of the importance of this programme and the benefits that those exports can bring to Japan as a nation, which, as I say, are recognised across the trilateral partners, they have taken some very significant steps to be ready for that. From a UK point of view, and equally from our colleagues in Italy point of view, we do, of course, all have significant experience in terms of exports in this space. As I mentioned earlier, the defence exports in the UK, around 80% or plus is generally in the combat air domain. And that allows the UK to, of course, leverage those broader relationships as well from a strategic partnership point of view, both with existing but also with new partners. And in fact, I always sort of take the opportunity to remind people that the relationship that we have with Japan, in fact, is a great example of that. We almost take it for granted now already that is that's just business as usual. But that partnership in of itself is hugely transformational. And I know that not just from a BAE point of view, but all the other industry partners will, of course, be looking and supporting already very actively the opportunities that come with that export perspective.
Zevi, it's really important. I think we're building on a really solid legacy here. For every pound that was invested by the UK in Typhoon, the UK's benefited to the tune of £2, and that's been a real export success. Retaining that whole aircraft capability, and when I say whole aircraft, I'm talking about the sensors, I'm talking about the airframe, I'm talking about the engines and how we integrate all of that, it makes us an attractive partner for lots of other countries around the world. It's not just about GCAP. It is about everything that goes into GCAP. John just talked about Factory of the Future. That can translate to other people. We can sell that skill. We have lots of people talking to us at Rolls-Royce about power and propulsion and the integration of power and propulsion for next generation. They're doing that because of the GCAP and FCAS programs, and it generates interest in UK combat air, which is really important for us as a nation to be able to sell abroad. John talked about it. 80% of all exports in the last decade have been combat air. The only way to really sustain that into the future is through this program. But this program, in and of itself, will be the heart of it, but it will spin off in so many different directions in terms of skills and capabilities, right throughout the supply chain. That's why exportability is important, not just the aircraft, but everything that the aircraft will kick off.
Zevi, I'd just add from the team as well, of course, the UK government's narrative over the last months has been around growth. And growth is going to come in part from strong exports. Defence has been a key tacit of our export opportunity from the UK for a number of years, and this represents an ongoing commitment to that from government. What we're doing again is ensuring that the UK has the intellectual property that allows us to export, because you need to invest in that intellectual property onshore with sovereign capability to develop the capabilities and the technologies that we're talking about. And then it's about strong, robust, enduring partnership going forward. And I think the programme is flexible enough to be able to talk to third parties around how they might join in the future, as well as do direct export sales opportunities, which then gives opportunities in terms of support, maintenance and R&O and those type of things in the future. But it's having that ambition from government, wanting to drive export, looking at the models that we have that exist around that, and then working with its industrial partners and its institutions such as ADS to ensure that we've got an equipped onshore capability to support those export customers in the future. I'm really pleased that the government, through the Defence Industrial Strategy, through the pillars that we've seen coming forward around growth and sector development, really focusing on this as an opportunity.
Clive, Mark and John, thank you very much for joining us today. In the next episode of Future Horizons, we look at the skills that will be fundamental to delivering Team Tempest and why being a part of Generation Tempest is such an exciting career opportunity.